Hi, this is Jamie Kale Miller of PandoraAstrology.com, and today I'm going to give you a super fast introduction to astrology. This is the same way I explain astrology to every client that I see. We're going to move through this really fast, so don't feel like you have to memorize everything that I'm telling you right now. And after the reading that you come in for, I'm going to give you a cheat sheet that explains this even further and will enable you to decode your chart. When you see an astrology chart for the first time, it looks like an incomprehensible mass of squiggles. Or it looks like a foreign language or a code, which is actually exactly what it is. After this introduction, it will make a lot more sense to you. We're looking right now at the chart of Whoopi Goldberg. I chose Whoopi's chart for this because she inspires me, and nothing would please me better than to do a reading for her. I like to read for people who are up to big things and living life on purpose. Let's just sit down and imagine that you're Whoopi, this is your chart, and I'm looking at it with you. Your chart is a diagram of the sky at the time and from the place where you were born. It's a cross section. There's this line across the middle going from left to right, and that represents the horizon. Everything in the upper half of the wheel was above our heads, possibly visible at the time you were born. Everything in the lower half of the wheel was down below the earth under our feet when you were born. The symbols around the outer edge are planets in our solar system, and they symbolize parts of you, archetypes within you, or subpersonalities. We all contain all the same ones, but what makes us unique is how they are arranged in the wheel, because that's always changing. And just to give you an idea how different the arrangement can be, here's Kenneth Branagh's chart by contrast, and just for fun, here's Drew Barrymore's. So you can see that charts can look very different despite having all the same stuff in them. I like to think of these planets in your chart as the characters in the grand drama of your life. Each character is on a particular mission according to its own nature and wants to bring something into your life that's good. When you discover what each of these characters needs in order to fulfill its mission, you can unlock and unleash its ability to bring great stuff into your life, like a satisfying career, a loving relationship, and a happy home life. Just for an example, I'm pointing right now to the moon, which represents your inner child and your capacity to give and receive emotional care and nurturance. And also, the moon wants you to have emotional experience and to use your intuition. I'm going to circle it right now in blue. When you give your moon what it needs, it will create a home life that's supportive and restful and fills you up emotionally. When your moon is unhappy, you feel ill at ease, maybe anxious or ungrounded or unsafe or insecure, and you can fix that by learning about what your moon needs and addressing that. Over here we have Venus, the little woman symbol. She's the goddess of love and beauty, and her mission is to bring you into relationship and connectedness with people. Think of her as your personal social director. Venus in your chart tells you what types you're most compatible with, and when you give Venus what she needs to do her job for you, then she'll make you more attractive to the exact kind of people you love to be around. When your relationships are not going well, it's probably because you're not using your Venus to her full potential, and that can be fixed. Next to the moon in this chart is Mercury, which I'm going to circle in orange. He's the thinker in you, and he wants you to express your curiosity, learn new and interesting ideas, and to communicate with other people. If you know someone who isn't curious and open to new ideas and who is hard to communicate with, it's most likely a problem with their Mercury, and you can look at their chart to diagnose the problem. We've also got Mars. Right here, I'm going to circle it in red. The little man symbol. He's the hero, the warrior, the pioneer, and the athlete in you, and he wants you to assert yourself, go after what you want, and enjoy your active body. If you don't assert yourself, it's probably a Mars issue. So each of these symbols around the outer edge is a planet and has a mission that it wants to do, and if it's not doing its mission, you can bet there's a reason why, and it's probably a fixable thing. The planets are placed in signs of the zodiac, shown just a little bit further in towards the center of the wheel. Here we have a bunch of stuff in Scorpio, a couple things in Sagittarius, some stuff in Libra, and a scattering of other things. The signs are like costumes the characters are wearing. They limit or assist the characters in fulfilling their missions. Sometimes a costume fits really well and comfortably, enabling that character to fulfill its mission easily. And other times the costume does not fit so comfortably, and that makes it harder for the character to fulfill its mission. The sign a planet is in is one big key to solving its problems, one of several. Living out that sign's traits well is like putting the right fuel in the tank of that planet. When you have several planets in a particular sign, that sign becomes a big part of your personality, whether it's the sign you're used to thinking of as your sign or not. When you say, I'm a Scorpio, I'm gonna get my green color out. When you say I'm a Scorpio, you're talking about your sun sign, and it's shown right here. This actually is a little packet of information stating Sun in Scorpio, and I've circled it in green right here. But you can see that the whole astrology chart is here, and it's pretty obvious that your Sun is just one part of a much bigger picture of who you really are. People who say astrology is bunk because they don't fit the mold of their sun sign and they feel limited to one of 12 general types, those people are simply not operating with all of the information. They haven't bothered to actually find out what's in their chart. An astrology chart provides an immense amount of information beyond the rather superficial sun sign. If you want your life to go well, you'd better figure out what signs are featured in your chart and start living them out in a good way, or you're putting bad fuel or the wrong fuel in the tank. And you can't expect the engine of your life to go well if you're not filling the tank with the good stuff it needs. The characters in their costumes are placed in these pie sections of the wheel. They are called houses. For example, I'm pointing right now to Jupiter in Leo. Let's circle that in purple. Jupiter in Leo. The houses are numbered. This Jupiter is in the 7th house. I'm going to expand the circle to include that. So now we see Jupiter in Leo in the 7th house. The houses are numbered, beginning over here under the left-hand horizon with number 1 and going counterclockwise all the way around the wheel from 1 to 12, which means that Jupiter is placed in the 7th house. The houses are like the settings or scenery of the chart. They show us domains of life and the activity in those domains. This chart has a lot of stuff up here in the 9th house. And also a lot of stuff in the 8th house and the 7th house, and a couple of things in the 10th house too, which suggests that these houses are very active. The 9th is the domain of personal growth, expansion, travel, and interaction with people of differing cultures. So we would expect that you, remember, we're pretending that you're Whoopi Goldberg, are a multicultural person and something of a seeker. The 8th house is the house of death and rebirth, of profound change, also the house of intimacy, and that is a very active area in this chart. Such a person has a rich private life that they often want to keep private. The 7th is the domain of partnership and relationship, one-on-one relating, so that's also a very active area in this chart. And finally, the 10th is the domain of career and public life, suggesting that career is important for you. Sometimes there are empty houses in a chart, which often gives a person concern when they see that in their chart. This is completely normal and nothing to worry about. For example, just because Whoopi has nothing in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 5th houses, does that mean she's got no identity, no money, no communication, and no creativity? This is kind of funny because if you followed Whoopi Goldberg's career at all, then you know that she's loaded with personality, pulled herself up from poverty to make plenty of money. You'd know that she's quite the communicator and a very creative person. So why don't those empty houses mean lack of activity? The reason is simple. It's that the planets and the signs and the houses all correspond with each other in these little packets of 3. So that for every house in the chart wheel, there's a sign of the zodiac and a planet that rules it, all gathered together under a single major life theme. It's as if all of life fits into these 12 general life themes, each of which can be understood through its planet, its sign, or its house. So if you go to the chart wanting to understand an area of life, like relationships or career or family, and the house is empty, all you have to do is look to the planet or sign to get an understanding of what's up with that area of life. The mixing up of these themes with characters wearing costumes that belong to other characters and occupying scenery that belongs to other characters, you end up with these 12 variables on 3 different levels, mixing up of an enormous variety of personality traits. This is what makes human beings interesting and unique. This is why, in my opinion, astrology is the best personality inventory system in existence, because it's the best system for reflecting to us our own complexity in enormous detail. And it's a part of nature. We didn't invent it, we didn't think of it, we didn't design it. It's just, it exists in nature. We only discovered it and measured it. And how cool is that? So I've given you 3 layers so far: planets, signs that they're in, houses that they occupy. The planets are characters, the signs are the costumes they're wearing, and the houses are the scenery or settings of life. And they all parallel each other in little packets of 3, fitting into a neat system of 12 main themes of life. But there's one other layer that's really important, and that is something that astrologers call aspects, which are all these colored lines here in the middle of the wheel. You can think of these aspects as scripts. The characters are playing out with each other, like conversations or dialogues they're having. Some are perpetual arguments and some are agreements. I've set this chart to show them in 3 colors: red, blue, and green. The red lines symbolize connections between the planets that are stressful in nature. When 2 characters within you are connected by one of these red lines, that means they are in a perpetual argument or a no conversation. Each of them thinks that it has to fight the other in order to fulfill its mission. And remember, each of them really wants to fulfill its mission. Whenever you have planets that are joined by a red line, whether it's a square, which is a 90-degree angle, or an opposition, which is a 180-degree angle like this, either of these red lines means that 2 sides of you are struggling to get along. They may be having some kind of a tug of war or otherwise frustrating and obstructing each other's progress. This shows ways that you get in your own way, frustrate yourself, or even sabotage your own progress. And it's a solvable problem. You have to understand and honor the needs of each of these 2 sides of you and help them work to overcome their differences and get along and understand each other. This is one of the places where your life is inherently challenging, but the good news is that when you apply yourself, you're rewarded with skills that you have built on purpose. That's why I call these a gift wrapped in an unattractive package. These challenges force you to be self-aware, and when you overcome them, you know what you have, and you can use it on purpose. You have built character, and this is one great reason to have an astrology reading, so you can get on top of your life's challenges instead of drowning in them. Here's an example. Over here, I'm going to circle it in brown. We have Saturn in Scorpio in the 9th house, and it's got a red line connection to Pluto in Leo in the 7th house, which I'm also circling in brown. The red line connection goes like this, but I'm going to draw that connection in brown just so you can see it really clearly. Saturn in the 9th house often symbolizes growing up with intolerance and needing to learn to expand and grow beyond a small worldview that you were given in your childhood. Saturn square to Pluto often shows up in the charts of people who either grew up in poverty or with parents who had issues with money, and the person doesn't easily trust authority figures. That makes it hard to find trustworthy mentors and to progress in your career, but it also means that you can attain great wealth if you're willing to do the psychological work needed to expand yourself as a person. Obviously, Whoopi has been doing the work. These kinds of built-in challenges force you to be self-aware, and when you overcome them, you know what you have and you can use it on purpose. And quite frankly, what fun would life be without challenges? Why would we bother? Challenges are good, and your chart shows the hard stuff you took on by being born into this life. When you understand that stuff, you can get out of your own way and stop sabotaging yourself. When you've got 2 things that are connected by a blue line, like here or here, get my arrow going on here, like that, When you've got these blue line connections, then you've got two characters that are connected very harmoniously in the grand drama of your life. They're helping each other out, and they're basically saying yes to each other. This gives you a lot of natural talent and ease and flow in the area that those two planets rule. Each one is ready to help the other fulfill its mission. In fact, each one sees the other's mission as an extension of its own. We have a sextile here, and that is something that links two things that are 1/6 of the circle apart. A trine links two things that are placed 1/3 of the circle apart. Both of these are harmonious connections. Here's an example in Whoopi's chart. Mars in Libra, which I had already circled in red, trine the Aquarius rising, which I'm going to also circle in red, and draw the line between them. And I'm going to draw it in blue just to avoid confusion because it's a blue line connection. Aquarius rising, which Whoopi has, tends to show up in the charts of people who can't help but be individualistic. They are rebels, revolutionaries, experimenters, and innovators. They often rub people the wrong way, especially when they're young and unformed. Mars is the warrior in us. This is saying that while Whoopi may have struggled because of the Saturn-Pluto connection I mentioned before, at least she had her own inner warrior on her side and she could fight her own battles. Mars in Libra suggests she learned to fight fairly and gently and could stand up for herself and also be relatable. Now you may be asking yourself, wouldn't I want to have all harmony in my chart? Why would I want to have any stress at all? And you might really want to ask yourself that because the red lines are stressful and the blue lines are harmonious, but the green lines, like this one, are super stressful. So you may be asking, why would I ever want to have stress in my chart? Why wouldn't I just want to have all harmony? Well, the reason is simple. It's because in the places where you have harmony, you take things for granted. You expect life to go that way. It goes easily for you and there's no incentive to grow at all. You have natural talent, but there's a little touch of complacency in areas that comes right along with it. You can be kind of arrogant, entitled, and clueless there. You also resist change because, hey, if it works, why fix it? You can slide along your whole life on those harmonious connections. You know people like this, right? And even while you're going along with their flow, aren't they really rather annoying? You may also notice that in the places where you do have stress and challenge, you have to work for what you get. Like I said, those are like a great gift wrapped in a really unattractive package. You have to work for what you get, but you really value it once you've worked for it. And stress makes you self-aware. Therefore, lack of stress can make you unself-aware. And one of the other good reasons to have an astrology reading is that if you become aware of these natural talents that you have and you decide to cultivate them, you can grow them into something really great. It's like when you're on a bicycle going downhill. Sure, you could just coast, but if you pedal, you can go much further and much faster. Now for the green lines. These are super stressful. They show conversations between two planets that are inherently anxious because each one has no clue how to relate to the other. But they have to figure out how to get along because they are connected. Each views the other as an alien being, and they have no basis for common understanding. But both want to fulfill their missions in spite of the fact that there's someone at this party that doesn't get them and seems to see their flaws in sharp relief. A person with a lot of these is riddled with anxiety, a rigidly self-perfecting person who has a hard time relaxing. But once you understand these, there is a lot of power in them. They are resolvable, and when you do resolve them, they allow you access to your own untapped superpowers. These green connections are called quincunxes, and Whoopi doesn't have a lot of them, but here's an interesting one. Jupiter here in the 7th house, and I had circled that in purple. I'm going to bring my circle down to a more normal size here so we can see that it's right around Jupiter. Jupiter here, and it's quincunx, Chiron in Aquarius, which I'm going to circle. Whoops, need my circle to do that, and I'm going to make it purple just for continuity, and then draw the quincunx connection between the two of them. So to put it into English, Jupiter here in the 7th, quincunx Chiron in Aquarius in the 12th. Now that was a mouthful I just said, and it did sound really technical, so stay here with me because the interpretation is really specific. This describes someone who is really ambivalent about being big. This person has a humble streak, and that's the Chiron side, a side that's all about the people, but she also has this big personality side, and that's the Jupiter in Leo. These two sides disagree so strongly that it's even worse than them not speaking the same language. It's like one of them doesn't speak a language at all, like a diplomat trying to negotiate with a hyena. It makes a person very anxious, but when resolved, you end up with a superpower on your hands. So the result is, when Whoopi hits the sweet spot, she can be a humble superstar who makes sure that everyone's voice is heard and sometimes uses her own big voice to speak for those who have been silenced. So as you look all around the chart, you can begin to see that there is so much more here than the common variety of astrology book or newspaper or online horoscope can tell you. Now, Whoopi can say, I'm a Scorpio, because here's her sun in the sign of Scorpio, but when she says I'm a Scorpio, she's only talking about that one piece of a much bigger picture. And as you can see, there's so much more to her than that. Sure, she's got a sun sign, but she's also got a Venus sign, and a Mercury sign, and a moon sign, and a Uranus sign, and a Jupiter sign, and tons of other stuff. And that's not even counting the house positions of these planets and their connections to each other. The chart is actually a wonderfully detailed and fine-tuned, even granular way of expressing a human personality. In fact, astrology is much more fit than any other personality system in existence to explain your own human complexity to you. When you and I sit down to do a reading, it's like we're stopping life and taking the 10,000-foot view. We're opening up the owner's manual to your life, and we're asking ourselves the really big questions. What are your natural talents? How can you live into them more fully? What are the challenges you came here to face? How can you face them more courageously? How can you find success, happiness, and love? What is your purpose? Why are you here? And what are the experiences you absolutely must have in order to feel like this life was well lived? I personally don't think that there are any wrong charts or bad charts. I don't think that there is such a thing as anything you could find in a chart that's inherently wrong or bad. I don't believe in fate or determinism, and you should never come away from me feeling like you're stuck in a fate you didn't choose. When I read your chart, I like to think that I'm not just speaking to the everyday personality that you are, I'm speaking directly to the eternal being that occupies that personality. I believe that you have existed for millennia and you chose this life for a reason with everything in it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I really believe that if you see yourself reflected in your chart and all the beauty and the magnificence that you are, you wouldn't even want to be anybody else. If you've been watching this video in preparation for an astrology reading, then thank you for watching all the way through. And I'd like you to email me your questions and concerns so that I can prepare to answer them in the ways that you need. If you found this video while looking around online, then you can find me at pandoraastrology.com. And either way, I'm looking forward to meeting you so that we can sit down together and talk about what to do with your one wild and precious life.